Hey guys, Andy Stacks here. This is a continuation of the Mystery Bounty event I played at the APTC in Taipei. If you missed the previous episode, no worries, you can follow along here first and go back later to watch the previous episode on my channel anytime. So I had just got moved to a new table and the blinds are now 1,000, 2,500, 2,500. For those that watched part 2 from this tournament, saw that I had built up to a pretty healthy stack after catching a couple lucky hands. So I sit down at this new table and one of the first hands I get dealt is pocket jacks. I'm in the cutoff, it folds to me and I raise to 5,500. The player to my direct left on the button thinks about it for quite a while. He has about 18 big blinds left and eventually shoves all in for 46,000. The small blind folds and the big blind decides to 4-bet all in as well for 48,000. It's about 17 big blinds more for me to call. I have them both covered. Based on our stack depths and positions, I think in this configuration, this is a pretty easy call. I think both players could be shoving many pairs worse than mine, as well as any two unpaired high cards. So I do make the call. And the button shows Ace-8 of diamonds, and the big blind shows Queen-10 of hearts. The board runs out King, 4, 7, rainbow. The turn is the Ace of hearts, giving Ace-8 the top pair and the big blind a backdoor flush draw and a gutter. The river is the King of diamonds and Ace-8 triples up. Pretty disappointing result. Could have won a massive pot here, 3-way, but there's no time to feel sorry for myself. I still had a very healthy stack. So let's move on to the next hand. Not long after this hand, I get moved to a new table again. Everybody folds to me, I'm in the cutoff again. I look down at pocket nines. The blinds are now 1,500, 3,000, 3,000. I go ahead and open to 7,500. Small blind folds and the big blind calls 7,500. Heads up, the flop comes Ace of hearts, 6 of diamonds, Deuce of clubs. He checks. With pocket nines here, I think betting here is better than checking. If I had a pocket pair like pocket queens or pocket kings, I'd be less concerned about overcards coming on the turn or river and could consider checking. But with pocket nines, I think a small bet works well. So I bet 4,000. Big blind does decide to call, and the turn is the Queen of diamonds, and he checks again. I decide to check back, happy to try and show down my nines. The river is the Jack of spades, and here he decides to bet out for 18,000. Pretty sizable bet. The size did look a little bit suspicious to me. I thought about making a hero call here. He is in the big blind. I do beat hands like 4-5, 3-5, 3-4, or some random floats that have backdoor draws. But I think my hand's just too weak here, not unblocking any of the value that he could have. Decide to fold. Let's move on to the next one. So after this hand, I get randomly picked to move again. And for the next 2 levels, I'm just completely card dead and just slowly blinding down. The blinds are now 3,000, 6,000. I'm under the gun +1. We're playing 7-handed, and I look down at Queen Jack offsuit. This hand's probably a little bit loose to open, but I decide to open anyways to 12,000. Everybody folds to the big blind, who defends. Heads up to the flop, comes Ace of clubs, 6 of hearts, 4 of diamonds. He checks. On an ace high board that's pretty dry, I go ahead and make a small down bet of 6,000. And he check calls. The turn is the 9 of clubs, and he checks again. I don't pick up any equity with this turn card, but he is in the big blind, so he could be calling with a pretty wide range here. Unless he has an ace, it's going to be hard for him to call a second barrel. I think if the turn was a card like a 7, a 5, or an 8, one of these cards that connects closer to the 6 and the 4, I'd probably be more inclined to give up, because if you had any of the smaller pairs, like 4-5, 6-5, 6-7, all of them would either improve to 2-pair or to a straight draw, and a second barrel would be less likely to get through. So I do bet again, this time for 13,000. He thinks about it for a while and does let it go. Pretty happy obviously that this one got through. If he did call this one, I'd be left with less than 10 big blinds, so this was a much needed victory. I think also, like I said, I had been folding on this table for about 2 levels, so that certainly probably helped my image. Alright, next hand, the blinds are still 3,000, 6,000. This time I'm in the big blind with 4-7 of diamonds. Under the gun opens to 12,000. Everybody folds. My hand's terrible, but I'm suited. I'm last to act, closing the action. Why not throw in the 6,000 more? Flop comes 7 of clubs, 5 of diamonds, 9 of hearts. Not a bad flop for this suited junk. I hit a pair of 7s with a backdoor flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. I check and the under the gun player checks as well. The turn is the king of hearts. Not the best card to see for my hand. I check again and now the under the gun player bets 14,000. I think facing this bet, he could easily have the king, but I still have to make the call. My hand still could be ahead. He does know that the king is a good bluff card for his range, so I do call 14,000. The river is the beautiful 7 of spades, giving me trip 7s. I decide to check, and I'm praying that he's gonna value bet a king if he has one, or decide to keep bluffing if he was bluffing on the turn. He thinks about it for a while and bets 30,000. I have only 72,000 left, so my decision is pretty easy. Go ahead and shove all in. It's only 42,000 more for him to call. He tanks and tanks before eventually making the crying call. And we see him flip over ace king, so I did get very lucky here on the river. I don't blame him for trying to go for more value on the river. Honestly, I think if I had his hand, I'd probably go for value as well. But I think after I go all in, even getting such a great price, I think he just has to fold. I know that it's just mathematically a disaster folding after betting the river, but based on my experience, given the action, ace king is just never good on this board after he bets the river and the opponent puts the rest of it in for not much more. Maybe in a cash game or on one of those stream games I used to play on against a very wild player that likes to make some crazy moves for the camera, I might consider a call, but in this situation, I think folding would probably save him quite a few chips in the long run. So this was a pretty big double up for me. I had over 200,000 after this hand, which is about 33 big blinds. Alright, next hand. Blinds up, 5,000, 10,000. I'm in the big blind again, and this time I have Queen 6 offsuit. The player under the gun +1 raises to 20,000. Everybody folds to me. I think with Queen 6 offsuit, this hand is probably best to just fold, even heads up. I think if someone else had called, I would definitely fold. I'd rather call with hands like 6-7 offsuit, 3-4 suited. So I think I make a small mistake here and end up calling anyways for 10,000 more. The flop comes ace, queen, 6. So I ended up flopping bottom 2 pair. This is probably why I end up calling with hands like this in the first place. You know, I think we probably all have selective memory, calling with trashy hands and getting rewarded by hitting a big flop. Obviously there are 2 cards to come and he still could have hands like ace queen, pocket aces, but I think with my stack size, I'd be happy to play for it all here. I go ahead and check and he goes for a bet of 14,000. I think my hand rarely raises here against an under the gun +1 open, so I decided to just call. The turn is the 4 of spades. I check again. He thinks about it for a while and bets 37,000. I count out my stack, pull out the 37,000 and see that I'll have about 140,000 left if I make the call, which is only 14 big blinds. I don't think he's getting away from it if he does have an ace. And if he does have me beat, I'm probably not folding to any river bet unless it's an ace or a 4. So I do shove all in and he immediately makes a disgusted face and seems pretty unhappy with this situation. Eventually he finally does make the call and shows ace 10 offsuit. So still some cards we have to dodge, and the river is the jack of hearts. So we survive and get another full double up. Pretty big victory at this stage in the tournament since we're getting closer to the end of day 1. So for the next hand, the blinds are still 5,000, 10,000. I'm under the gun +2 and look down at queen jack of hearts. I open it to 25k, and the player in the hijack, who's the same player that I had just doubled through with the queen 6 offsuit, 3 bets to 62,000. It folds back to me and he had me covered, but we were both deep enough that I thought that there was enough playability. Also, he seemed a little bit steamed up still from the last hand, so I thought there's a chance he could be prone to making more mistakes against me post-flop. So I went ahead and called the 37,000 more. The flop comes 10 of hearts, 5 of clubs, deuce of spades. I check to him and he makes a pretty small bet of only 30,000. With a backdoor flush draw and a backdoor straight draw and 2 overcards, I go ahead and make the call. The turn is the 4 of spades, not quite what I was looking for, so I go ahead and check and he checks back. The river is the 8 of diamonds. Now after he checks the turn, I think on this river, this is just the green light to go ahead and go for the steal. I wanted to bet a size that would make all the ace highs and all the king highs like ace queen, king queen in a tough spot, so I sized up to 72,000. And while I was sitting there waiting for him to fold, I was very surprised when he decided to raise to 205,000, leaving himself just a little bit left behind. Pretty frustrating outcome. I guess the only hand that could really do this is pocket eights. Or maybe he had a hand like ace 3 suited that turned the wheel and was trapping. Either way, I guess we'll never know. Not long after that hand, we do make it to the end of day 1. Unfortunately, that last pot did cost us quite a bit of chips, and we end up bagging 176k, which is 15 big blinds. So we come back the next day, ready to go on day 2. There's 64 players left out of 667. We're already in the money, the bounties are now in play, but unfortunately, we're quite short stacked. And in this first blind level of 6k, 12k, I'm just completely card dead. It isn't until the 8,000, 16,000 blind level where I finally look down at pocket sixes in the big blind, and the super short stack on our table shoves for less than 2 big blinds. But before the action even gets back to me, 2 players in front of me go all in. A lot of these players are going to be playing a lot looser due to the bounties in play now, but with this action in front of me, my sixes are too weak here, so I have no choice but to fold. So 2 players end up flopping a straight, but ace king scoops it all. So for the rest of this level, I'm getting blinded down fast and I haven't even played a single hand. There's just a ton of loose action and all-ins on my table with everybody trying to win the bounties, but I'm just being forced to fold every time. The blinds get raised to 10,000, 20,000. I'm sitting on 105,000 left. About 5 big blinds here. I'm in the small blind and look down at ace 9 of clubs. Our table's chip leader, who's under the gun, opens to 40,000. Everybody folds to me, and I think I just have to put it in at this point. I'd be a lot more comfortable putting it in against a hijack or a button open, but with what I have left, I think this hand is just too good to pass up here. So I go ahead and put the rest of the chips in. And to my surprise, the big blind decides to go all in as well for 283,000. The original raiser snap calls and shows jacks. The small blind shows ace 8 offsuit, which is pretty bad for me since he has one of my aces. And unfortunately, the jacks do hold up. So we end up busting in 54th place. It's too bad that I wasn't able to find a double up earlier on in day 2 and be able to have a better shot at picking up some bounties. Well, either way, I'm still pretty happy with the experience gained from playing this tournament. As always, let me know your thoughts on any of these hands today. Comments and critiques are always welcome. Like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next tournament.
喜欢我的影片，不要忘记按赞、订阅、打开小铃铛。